The movie starts in 1904, at the Imperial Theater in Moscow. A man approaches Irina Arkadina, a renowned stage actress, to relay rather concerning news. Her brother Pyotr Sorin is in ailing health. His doctor wants people close to him to be there by his side. Right after the play, Irina travels to the countryside, where her brother's estate is. Accompanying her is her lover, Boris Trigorin, a celebrated novelist at that time. They are welcomed by Polina, the wife of Ilya, the estate steward, and Masha, Polina's daughter. Inside they see Irina's son, Konstantin, and Yevgeny Dorn, the family doctor. They all gather around Sorin, who tries to downplay his condition. Irina gives her brother affection, then she looks at her son walking towards Boris. The novelist approaches Konstantin. He says the latter is not angry with him anymore, as a way of confirming if it's true. Irina, worrying about how her son will react, says Boris has brought the magazine with his published story in it. Konstantin looks at it, then politely thanks Boris for his kindness. Irina can see that there's still a little anger left in her son, but this is better than before. Boris relays how Konstantin has many admirers in Moscow, always asking for his works. Konstantin drops the magazine rather strongly on the table, before facing Boris and asking him if he had read his story. The novelist only says he's planning to read it on the train back to Moscow, perhaps by the next day. There's a hint of contempt on Konstantin's face, as he knows Boris's character well. He simply walks away, refusing to engage in a conversation with him. The others have laid out a table to play lotto to pass the night. Konstantin refuses to join them. Instead, he goes back to his study. He plays the piano to ease the melancholy he's been feeling lately. But even the melodic sound of the instrument can't drown out the conversation of the people in the living room. He hears Boris say that critics are not very kind in their review of Konstantin's stories. He doesn't seem to have a voice in his works. Then he hears Dr. Dorn say he believes in Konstantin's works. His strength is in imagery, and they are all striking. As he continues to play, Konstantin hears a knock on his window. It's Nina. This is the first time he's seen her in 2 years. Her hair is unkempt, and there's worry in her eyes. But Konstantin is happy to see her. He remembers that time when all was still well, and his melancholy wasn't as deep as it is now. We see a flashback 2 years ago, in that country estate during summer. Konstantin and Nina are lovers. Nina is the daughter of a neighboring estate. She always comes to the country house to spend time with her lover. At this point in the story, we see the two lovers preparing for an amateurish play, written and produced by Konstantin. He has always aspired to be a writer, and thus he writes pieces that, in his eyes, should be known to as many people as possible. He gets help from Yakov, their workmen, and other servants in setting up the stage. For this play, he thinks the woods beside the lake are the best location to portray his story. Watching his preparation is Masha. There's a longing in her eyes as he looks at Konstantin, who at that time is coming up from a quick dip in the lake. She feels an unrequited love for the man, despite the fact that Konstantin doesn't even look in her direction. Another man approaches her and greets her amiably. He's Medvedenko, a school teacher, and he's in love with Masha. He asks her why she's always wearing black. Masha says she's in mourning for her life. Honestly, it's a mood, but she feels this way because there's an unfulfilled love inside her that not even Medvedenko can fill. She tries to fill this void through her vices, which only worsens her wallowing. Medvedenko tries to put into perspective her mood. There's no reason for her to mourn because she has more money compared to him. Being a school teacher, he only has a meager salary. Masha points out that money isn't the problem. Even a poor man can be happy. Medvedenko asks why she's always indifferent to him. She stops him, hoping she can make her point. She says she can see that he loves her, but she just can't return it. Meanwhile, Konstantin approaches his uncle, Sorin, who's already seated on his chair. He worries that Nina may arrive late for her final instructions, as she's an important character in the play. From their place, they can hear Irina scolding the servants for not bringing her champagne. Sorin wonders why his sister is in such a mood. Konstantin answers, it's because she's irritated that she doesn't get to act in his play. From his point of view, his mother is jealous of his ability to write more meaningful plays. She acts mighty, thinking her craft is serving humanity. But Konstantin views it as trite and cheap. He's very passionate about his craft, saying the theater needs new forms, not those easily digestible cliches his mother plays in. Their conversation goes to Boris, Irina's lover. Konstantin says he's smart, unpretentious, and pretty decent. Not even 40 years old, and already a celebrity. There's a hint of envy in his voice. He doesn't want to admit even to himself that he's jealous of Boris's success. After all, this is what he wants to achieve too. Just then, he hears someone call Nina. He's truly in love with her, as he exclaims to Soren that even the sound of her name makes his heart skip a beat. Later, we see Polina sitting beside Dr. Dorn. She tells him she should put his boots on if his feet feel cold. She has romantic feelings for the doctor, and the latter knows it. But Polina knows propriety forbids her to do anything more than look at the capable doctor with barely hidden love. Soon, it's time for the audience to gather in front of the makeshift theater curtain. Irina is seated between Boris and Dorn, and Soren and Polina are seated at the edge. Masha and Medvedenko stand behind, along with the servants. Konstantin looks at them, as he gives a brief description of the play. It's a telling of what's about to come in 200,000 years, in a dream form. Soren makes a comment about how he'll be nothing by that time, and Irina adds they'll be asleep. Konstantin sounds the drum before going behind the curtain. Nina comes up and starts the narration. Konstantin is a bit upset that his mother is already not paying attention. Soren has dozed off, and Irina keeps making insolent comments, while others are just trying to understand what Nina is narrating. Fed up by his mother's interruptions, Konstantin suddenly stops the play and walks out, to the shock of everyone. Since the night is already ruined, everyone walks back to the house. Soren scolds his sister for not paying attention, but Irina maintains her innocence, saying her son's play is pretentious. She refuses to accept she has a part in her son's tantrums. It's a good thing that later, they witness a fireworks display in the distance, alleviating the heavy mood in their group. Irina notices Dorn, and remembers how he was so irresistible back in the day. Dorn looks at her a little too passionately. Polina sees this and gets jealous, so she walks out of the room. Her husband, Ilya, follows after her. Worried about her son now, Irina calls out for Konstantin. Masha volunteers to look for him. On her way, Masha hears her mother crying, and her father comforting her. When Ilya sees his daughter, he walks away without a word. Polina assures her daughter it's nothing. Masha, unaware of her mother's feelings for the doctor, nods and continues her search for Konstantin. She meets Nina by the door. Nina doesn't worry much about Konstantin. She's more focused on meeting Irina Arkadina and Boris Trigorin, who both have ignited her dreams of acting on stage. When Nina enters the parlor, Irina greets her warmly. Then they clap for her performance, despite it being cut short. Irina introduces her to Boris, and it's safe to say Nina is tongue-tied upon meeting the celebrity novelist. Irina says there's no big deal here, as Boris is a simple shy soul. Nina follows Boris in the adjacent room, wanting to have a conversation about the play. Boris admits he doesn't understand it. Right there and then, there seems to be an instant connection between Boris and Nina. But perhaps it's more strongly felt on Nina's part, as she's infatuated with the novelist's fame. Irina spots them. She says Nina shouldn't be flattering Boris, as he doesn't know how to behave when he's told nice things. They all return to the parlor, where Ilya is entertaining a group with a supposedly humorous anecdote. No one laughs though. Nina enters the room to bid goodbye to everyone. Just as she walks down the stairs, she hears Irina telling everyone about her family situation. Nina's father remarried, so she won't get anything unless she marries. Dorn adds that the father is also not a good man. Nina is offended upon hearing them. This is a magnificent house, but its walls can't stop gossip from flying around. Soon, everyone calls it a night. However, Dorn intentionally looks for Konstantin. He finds him by the dock at the lake. Dorn says he likes the play, and he genuinely means it. He says it gave him the feeling of loneliness. From the distance, they can hear Masha still calling Konstantin's name. Dorn continues to say that he's envious of artists. He's lived an interesting life, but he wants to feel that spiritual high that artists feel when they create something. He'll abandon everything to chase new highs, and never let himself get bogged down by his earthly existence. Dorn's sincere comments unfortunately fall on deaf ears, as Konstantin is more interested in looking for Nina. He gets up to follow her, but Masha, who's finally found him, blocks him. She offers any help, but he tells her to leave him alone. Dorn and Masha are left there, aghast at Konstantin's rudeness. Masha can't help but sit by the dock and take a sniff from her pouch of vice. Dorn reminds her it's a filthy habit, but she doesn't care. It seems like no one sees her suffering brought on by her unrequited love for Konstantin. Dorn can only remark that her suffering is part of the spells cast by the lake. Things go back to normal for the next few days. Konstantin is still reproachful of his mother, while Boris takes the opportunity to write his observations on the different characters of the estate. Irina craves action and attention. When she looks at Masha, she can't help but get bored at the woman's existence. She calls her to her side and asks Dorn to point out who looks younger. Of course, Dorn says it's Irina, which pleases the actress. Then she chides Masha for simply sitting in one place, not really living. unlike her, who constantly works and does something, thereby experiencing life. She also mentions her one rule in life: never think about passing away. What will come will come. Irina likes to tell everyone how she likes to doll up, even when she walks in the garden. She stays out of the sun, which is her secret for looking good at her age. She thinks of herself as still young and beautiful. She can play a girl of 15, a comment that makes a servant roll her eyes in secret. Irina Arkadina is just a sucker for compliments, even from herself. While having their lunch in the garden, Sorin arrives with Nina by his side. He says Nina's parents have gone to Yalta for a few days, so she will be staying with them in the meantime. Everyone welcomes her to join them. Irina asks her if she's spoken with her son, to which she says she hasn't. Masha interjects, saying Nina should recite the ending of the play. Nina is incredulous. Why would anyone want to know? Even she herself doesn't like the play. Masha looks at her as if saying, "Look at this wench." As they continue their meal, Irina sees her son walking into the forest carrying a hunting gun. She's still sad that Konstantin continues to avoid her, but it can't be helped. Sorin asks his sister if she can sing at least one song to liven up their party. Irina refuses since singing is not her forte. So everyone turns to Nina, since she's young and has a good voice. But of course, Irina wants the attention. So they all go inside the house and enjoy an impromptu performance by Irina. Soon everyone joins in singing. Nina looks at Irina with admiration, as she also hopes to be a successful actress like her. As for Irina, the sounds of merrymaking and singing and clapping make her feel alive and youthful. This is what she lives for. But once the excitement is over, she starts nitpicking at anything. She notices Nina and Masha reading boring books, her brother ignoring her, the hot temperature inside the room, and the peace that she mistakes for boredom. There should always be some kind of action in her life. She asks Polina to accompany her to town, to which the latter agrees. With something to look forward to, she orders Ilya to prepare the horses. The steward responds, with not much respect, that there are no horses available due to farming chores. This turns into a full-blown argument between Irina and Ilya. Irina says the steward is too incompetent in his job, while Ilya says the actress is too foolish to demand horses just for her whim. Right there and then, Ilya resigns from his post and walks out of the house, his wife frantically following him. Irina goes upstairs and decides she's had enough. Nina decides to look for Konstantin. She finds him returning from his hunt. He's carrying the seagull he has just shot. He drops it on her feet, which makes her feel insulted. Konstantin says he's sunk so low he has to shoot an innocent, and soon, his fate will be the same as the seagull. Nina is tired of this. She tells him she's been having a hard time understanding him lately because of the way he expresses himself. Perhaps she's too simple to understand his complex words, but Konstantin is just sulking because of his failed play, and all he wants is comfort from her. However, Nina won't hear any of it. She walks away, and Konstantin returns to the house, dejected. Meanwhile, Polina pours her heart out to Dorn. She's also suffering from her own predicament. She tells him they should run away together. They're not young anymore, so there's no reason to hide their relationship. But Dorn says he's too old to change his life for her. Polina understands that she's not important enough for him to go with her. He must have other women in his life, or else how can he invite all of them to live together with him? This makes her cry even harder. Oblivious to all the drama, Boris continues to write his observations. Interrupting his writing is Nina. She says Konstantin is still upset about the play, while in the distance her lover is looking daggers at her and the writer. Boris says he's upset too, but for different reasons. He and Irina are leaving that day. Nina is surprised, and Boris appreciates this reaction. He invites her to spend some time boating with him. Nina, clearly infatuated with his flattering comments, follows him. From the house, Irina can see them. Her insecurity gets triggered. After all, Nina is far younger and prettier than her. She tells her maid she wants to wear lavender when they leave, so she can feel beautiful. Boris and Nina spend the first minutes of their sailing, exchanging sweet glances. Nina asks him what he thinks about his fame. Boris gives a bland answer, as if trying to downplay his celebrity status. Nina declares that she'll endure anything to be famous. She'll accept poverty and bear her friends and family turning against her, just so she can demand real, resounding fame. They dock on a rocky bay and continue their conversation. Nina envies Boris's life and wants it for herself. Boris thinks of her as naive, which makes her angry. How can he be so simple about his fame that she clearly desires? She calls him pompous and jaded. Boris relents to what she wants. If she wants to talk about fame, so be it. He tells her that to maintain his popularity, he has to keep writing. He writes what he sees, and must find ways to incorporate them in his writing. Meanwhile, back at the house, Konstantin plays the piano again to ease his emotional burden. Masha wants to comfort him, but the latter shouts at her to go away. Miserable with the way she's being treated, Masha shouts at Medvedenko to go away, when the latter is simply just greeting her. Boris and Nina return to their boat. Boris says they must go back to the house. While rowing, he can't help but complain that he only wants peace, but he can't get it even while rowing in this serene place. Nina says they can row in silence until they return. A few seconds later, she complains about Konstantin being too involved with writing his play. Boris offers her a different perspective on why Konstantin is like this. Even when one is a lesser-known writer, writing can be an agonizing work. Despite this, there's still the intention of getting involved in literary circles because it gives a sense of belongingness. Nina comments about a writer's inspiration and the creation of his piece. Just for a brief moment, there's that feeling of sublime happiness when a writer has written what's on his mind. Boris looks at her in a different light. She understands a part of him that he's forgotten a long time ago. This makes Nina more interesting in his eyes. From a distance, they can hear Irina calling for him. Boris can't help but say he wishes to stay longer. When they return to the dock, they see the seagull that Konstantin shot earlier. Nina is exasperated, explaining to Boris what it is about. Boris just takes note of the bird, saying this inspires him to write a story. A short story about a young girl who spent her whole life on the shore of a lake she loves, where she feels happy and free like a seagull. Then a man comes along with nothing better to do. Boris doesn't tell her the last part of that sentence. A man comes along and with nothing better to do, destroys her. Everyone is busy with their different occupations. No one seems to think to check on Konstantin. He positions the muzzle on his head. What follows is the resounding sound of a shotgun, then a splatter of red on the window pane. When he wakes up, he finds his mother by his bedside. It's fortunate the bullet only grazed his head. Everyone is shocked by what happened to Konstantin, but none more than Masha. Sitting beside Boris, she declares she's going to move on. She's going to pull out the roots of this unfulfilled love by marrying Medvedenko. Even Boris thinks that's overdoing it, but she scoffs. Loving without hope brings indescribable despair she can no longer bear. She says, "At least Medvedenko loves her," and then she bursts into tears. Her distress rubs off on Boris, who's holding a letter from Konstantin before the unfortunate incident. In the letter, the young man challenges the novelist to a duel. When she reads the letter, she laughs. Only Masha is frank enough to reveal that Konstantin is jealous of him. After Masha leaves him, Nina enters the room. She doesn't seem disturbed about Konstantin's condition. She gives him a gift, something for him to remember her by. They hear Irina calling Boris. Nina pleads with him to give her 2 minutes before she runs away. In the gift, Boris sees instructions to check lines 11 and 12 from his novel. He decides to check it out, leaving Irina and Soren by the front porch. The siblings discuss Konstantin. Soren says the man is unhappy. Irina shoots back that she knows. How does that make her feel knowing she's bound to leave? She thinks it's Boris that makes her son feel intense jealousy. But Soren corrects her that it's not the only reason. If she'll give Konstantin enough money, he'll be out in the world discovering things. Then he won't feel so lonely in this country house. Irina says her costumes alone take a large part of her salary as an actress. She doesn't have enough to give her son. If she has, she'll definitely give it to him. Soren laughs at the best joke he's ever heard. He calls his sister a magnanimous, generous destitute. Just then, Soren gets a heart attack. Irina calls for help. Almost everyone, including Konstantin, comes to Soren's aid. Konstantin tries to convince his mother to give his uncle some money. Country living is not doing any good for his health, but Irina refuses, saying she has no money. Konstantin changes the topic. He asks her to change his bandage, which Irina happily obliges. Despite her conceit, she does care for her son. She asks him not to do this again while she's gone. For a moment there, Konstantin is like a little boy basking in the care of his mother. He tells her stories from his youth about her sincere kindness, now forgotten due to her status as an actress. He takes this opportunity to bring up his issue with Boris. That writer is wedging them apart, and Konstantin misses his old mother very much. Even now he knows that Boris is with Nina, flirting with her. Irina becomes defensive because a part of her is afraid to acknowledge that her son is right. She scolds Konstantin for being horrible to her. She reiterates that she respects Boris Trigorin, but Konstantin doesn't. He doesn't even like the writer's books. Irina points out that he's just feeling jealous. People who lack talent spend their time insulting those who have it. Konstantin shoots back. Is that why she keeps insulting her only son? Their conversation turns nasty as they start calling each other names. Irina calls her son a snide little non-entity who can't even write a decent sketch, while Konstantin calls his mother a has-been who acts in pathetic stage plays. Offended by his mother, Konstantin runs away. Irina follows. She can't lower her pride, so she compromises. She'll take Boris away, and Nina will love him again. But it's too late for the mother and son. Nina's infatuation has grown strong in the short period she spent with Boris, while the latter is already considering running away with her. He's read the passage Nina mentioned in her gift. It's from his novel, which says, "If you ever have a need of my life, come and take it." Boris decides to talk to Irina about this. He finds her washing her face in the lavatory. He asks her if they can stay for at least one more day. Irina knows that the reason he's requesting that is the very reason why they must go. She can't believe Boris is really head over heels in love with Nina. Boris insists on staying and being with the country girl. He's never known love like this, and this may be his last chance to have this opportunity. He asks her to let him go, however, Irina refuses. If he leaves, it may be the end of her. She starts calling him praises, complimenting his novels. She says it's impossible not to get swept up by his works. She's not flattering him. She's telling the truth, and she knows she's the only one who can truly tell him that. She begs him not to go as she passionately kisses him. Within him, Boris knows she's right. He admits he's no will of his own, that he's spineless and submissive. He retracts his earlier wish. He decides to go with Irina back to town. Irina is happy again, knowing she's defended what's rightfully hers from that lowly country girl. She gets ready to pack, not knowing what Boris has in mind. Later, Irina is saying goodbye to the servants of the house. She even gives 1 ruble to a maid, saying it's for all 3 of them. She thinks she's being generous, but she's only proving that she's stingy. Suddenly, Boris says he forgot his walking stick. He sneaks into the sunroom, where Nina has been waiting. He's sorry they're leaving, but she's not. She's decided to pursue her grand dream of becoming an actress. She'll soon leave her father, and hopefully, be with Boris when she gets to Moscow. He tells her to stay at a lodging place and let him know when she makes it. With that, they kiss ardently, both knowing they'll soon see each other to satiate their needs and whims. And then, Boris is gone. This is the end of the recollection that happened 2 years earlier. We go back to the start of the movie, where everyone gathers again at the country estate. Masha has followed up with her claim of marrying Medvedenko, but she still nurses a soft spot for Konstantin, causing her marriage to suffer. Polina comforts her, but she knows too well the misery of unrequited love. After all, Dorn left her to see new places and seek new conquests. Konstantin has achieved his dreams. He's become a published writer and gradually gained the attention of the critics. But he's still not happy. Before the arrival of Irina and Boris, he tells everyone what he knows about Nina, his former lover's plight. She had gone to Moscow and lived with Boris for a short time. They had a baby, but it left the world too soon. Boris got tired of her shortly after and left her to go back to Irina. Nina debuted in a theater outside Moscow, but she never made it into the mainstream. She toured the provinces with a small theater troupe, showing her meager acting skills. It appeared the glamorous life of an actress was not what she always thought of. She did live in destitution, but never found the fame she demanded. At that point, Irina and Boris finally arrive. Konstantin is in his study when he gets a surprise visit from Nina. Poverty has taken away her usual blush and the glow in her eyes. She looks deranged as she reviews what they have become. He's a successful writer, and she's a lowly actress. Despite this, Konstantin still wants to love her. He doesn't care about her past, and he's even willing to come with her to her winter tour, but she refuses. She keeps saying she's a seagull, a nod to how Boris described her when they first met. Happy and free, until a man comes along to ruin her. Just like how Konstantin shot that seagull before. She says having faith in herself was what gave her strength to come through her life's ordeal. But Konstantin asks about himself. What if he's not strong enough to know what's in store for him? Nina doesn't answer, as she doesn't want to contemplate the idea. She reveals she's still in love with Boris. That's why she can't come with him. With that, she insists on leaving. As her parting words, she recites the introduction in Konstantin's failed play 2 years ago, to remind them of the time when things were still well. With a final look at Konstantin, Nina leaves. Just like earlier, nobody bothers to check on Konstantin. He starts burning his manuscripts, even the one he's currently working on. The others are merrily engrossed in their game of lotto. It's notable that Irina's brooch, a yellow flower surrounded by a red background, is placed at the center of her chest. They are unaware that Konstantin is preparing his hunting gun. He knows only one way to end his suffering. He positions the muzzle inside his mouth. A loud bang reverberates throughout the house. Dorn stands up, saying it must be an explosion from his medical bag. Irina spends a few tense seconds before she hears Dorn say it's one of his ether bottles that exploded. He assures everyone and tells them to sit. Then he calls Boris to the study room to ask his opinion about an article in the magazine. They have tried to cover it, but Irina knows. She remembers the lines of her son's play. She's the poor moon that shines her light on those lives that have ended, after completing their doleful circle.